I
Yeah?
don't know how to get it to. Maybe there's a way I can mute notifications. No. Like it's
So what
just
is popping up? Tell me.
every time you change even the slightest thing in main.py, it says running configure trusted domains. What does it want with this?
Is that a VS Code thing?
Security features of live share. What is I don't know why it's doing this. Like just it's frustrating the heck out of me right now. So like,
Do you think it's because I'm running live share inside of the environment and not running it in VS Code? Do you think it'd be better if I did that instead?
no, I don't know if it's that, man. I don't think it's that. It's just something is like listening for the changes every time changes are made into main.py, and
Yeah.
then it's just like then it tries to run something. I don't think you have anything running anymore. I looked at the terminal, everything's stopped.
Yeah, nothing's in this terminal. This other terminal is just the default VS terminal. There's nothing in here. This is the read-only terminal, so I can't do anything inside of that.
Okay, so it's every time something gets saved. It says the host doesn't allow running this command. Maybe you need to enable me being able to save it. Give me more permissions on this file.
Oh, sure. You want me to give you? Do you have autosave turned on?
I think that might be
Maybe?
why. On my instance, I have autosave on.
All right. So let's see. I gotta right-click you and do what?
Hey, Stupak, good to see you, man.
How do you enable the read-write again?
I usually would go for the command palette generally. That's the way I go.
Oh yeah.
find
Okay.
things, and then I'll look for it.
VS Code. VS Live Share. And then you look for what? Enable read-write.
Yeah, maybe that. I don't see it on my end because I'm a guest right now.
No, I don't see read-write. I see configure presence, disable authentication, follow participants. Participants. VS Code, live share, read, and writes.
Let's see if I can do something right now. Yeah, when I go, can you see what I typed at all or no?
Do that again? I can see what you're typing, yeah?
So it just won't let me save that though, apparently. Manage the extension. Live share extension. Guess I gotta turn autosave off, maybe? Get good, Brian. Get good, Brian. Thanks, real life OG.
Live share. Yeah, I remember last week I had to do like an on-off thing with you.
Did you go to the live share view in the activity bar?
Yeah, I'm in there right now.
And then
I'm in the activity bar. And then your name shows in contacts and also in the session.
Session details, and then something like right-clicking on my name or anything, or?
Yeah, but that didn't do nothing. Brian Clark, focus your attention.
No, I focused on you.
Okay. Yeah, no, not sure what that is.
All right, let me try turning off in my settings.
The autosave.
Okay, it's off. Try typing stuff and we'll see what happens. Save it. Oh my god. I
saved it. It's still happening?
All right, we need to clip this and send it and see what the heck is the deal here. Because that's frustrating as heck. Clipping. Stupak says, what's the error say? You're blocking it from me. It just says like the host doesn't allow running this command. If needed, ask them to enable it. I'm not running any command. So, and then running save participants. Running save participants. What does that mean? Quick fixes for main.py. So something's triggering that to happen, and then live share is like, no, you're not allowed to do that. And I'm like, I'm not even trying to do that. Like, I'm just sitting here watching.
Yeah, I know the only difference from last week and this week was right now I'm doing it all in the browser, and last week I did it from VS Code on my machine. So I don't know if that is making a difference between what's happening.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right. That is, I didn't realize the full difference there. Why would that be? Why would that matter though?
I'm not sure, but again, from my side, that's the only thing that's different right now. You want to disconnect from that really quickly and do this instead?
Disconnect from the live share session?
Yeah, like do you want me to create a live share session that's on my machine versus doing it in the browser environment?
Yeah, let's see if that makes a difference, just to get to the bottom of this. I'm really curious now.
Okay, so, and this will be a good example too. So what I'll do, I'll shut this down, not the environment. I'll just close the browser tab. And I'll open it, but then when we reconnect to it, it should still have all those files and sessions and stuff like that we already created.
It still shows me in the live share session. Like you left it? Oh, there it goes.
Okay, it should be stopping any minute now.
I just got removed.
All right, boom. I'm going to close that. Boom. Right, now I'm going to open. All right, now it's asking me to sign in. Configure trusted domains. Do you want to open this website? Sign into your accounts. All right, so right now I'm signing into an account. I'm signing into my work account. Site is trying to open VS Code. Okay. Sign into VS Online. I'm going to connect to this one, the one that says Python string, connect to environment. All right, and then now I'm connected to that environment.
Stupak says they Googled it, said go to settings, find live share debug, and then find enable guest debug control and check that. So maybe go back to the browser and let's see if this worked. Actually, I want to.
You want to go back? Okay.
Yeah, let's try it out.
Okay. Well, let me kill this one then.
There's got to be a way to tell like VS Code like stop notifying me too though. Like sometimes it's just like I don't want that. I guess Zen mode. If I went Zen mode, that would do it. Thanks everybody for the follows and support, by the way, as we're going through this. Really appreciate it. If you're just tuning in, you're lurking, thank you so much for being here. We're just working through a problem right now. If you're new to the stream, check out that clip that's in the chat right now from Stream Elements, the new viewer clip, and get some more details on what to expect with this channel. Stupak says maybe on yours too, Clarkio. Not sure. Okay, so we'll go to settings here. We'll search for what was it called again?
Are you open? Okay, so now I'm sending a collaboration session to you.
Allow guest debug control. Yeah, but I'm not debugging. We weren't debugging, were we?
Not
I'm not the host anyway, but I'll leave that check.
I sent you an invite. Let me know if you got it or not.
Last time it took a few seconds to come through, but we'll see.
Okay. Yeah, just spinning says Clarkio. Greg Clark has been invited.
Lod nerd. I hope I'm reading that right. IOD nerd. Hey, see you doing Python. Have you any experience with clone CMS? I do not. Sorry. I have no idea.
I've heard about it, but I have not touched it.
Heard about it, but you're not touching it. I know what CMS is. It didn't come through, man.
All right. So then, okay. And I'm doing this all inside of the situation. Let's do this. I'm going to send it to you again inside of the chat.
Okay.
Like our chat, not everyone's chat.
Mm-hmm.
Then let me know when you see it.
Open up a whole new instance of VS Code, which is lovely. Okay, we got it. Squared away. Oh, it was opening up. You know what it is? It's opening up the notification like another instance of VS Code I just saw. So weird. Like it seems like it only shows the notification in one instance of VS Code, and if you don't have that one active and focused, then
Then it causes a problem.
It doesn't. Well, I mean, you just won't see it. That's what it looks like. But I could be doing something wrong.
Okay. Right. Well, I see it says Clark here has joined the collaboration session.
Yep, I'm in.
All right.
So you're in the browser now. You go to settings.
Oh, I have to do it, or do you have to do it?
Yeah, you have to do it. So go to settings, then live share, and look for debug. So type live share space debug, and then just check.
Is live share one word? Debug.
Yeah, live share is one word. Because I'm still getting the notifications right now.
Live share debug and allow S debug control.
Yeah, check that.
Okay. Controls how to participant will join incoming shared debug sessions. What does this do? I know what that does.
You checked it?
I checked it.
Okay.
So do it again. Type and save stuff.
Oh my gosh. What is this? All right, time to do some more Google foo. VS live share. Running save participants. What does that even mean, Basil? What does it mean, Basil? Collaborating user.
Yeah, and it's not popping up on my side.
Save participants. Oh my gosh, this is the most like irritating thing, because like we can't pay attention to what you're doing. Well, I mean, I can't because I guess I have ADD, ADHD or something. But like it just keeps popping up after everything you type. You type one letter, it starts saving, and it's like, you can't do this. You can't do this. You can't, and it like goes away and comes back, and then goes away and comes back over and over again. Live share quick fixes. Oh, maybe this is it.
What was it?
What if I just get rid of this and I think what's happening is the linter on my end is like trying to automatically update main.py with a quick fix.
Okay.
Running save participants. It's so confusing. Cancel. Don't do that.
So you're saying we have different linters?
Well, I'm using the Python 3.8 linter. At least that's the one I selected on my end.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're saying when you opened a file, by yourself, you got asked to install a linter separate from the linter that I'm using?
No, well, like I got a same thing, a notification in the bottom right corner of Visual Studio Code, and it's like, hey, you haven't selected a Python interpreter, not linter, sorry, interpreter. So I was like, okay, let me select one, and I choose Python 3.8. What does yours say in the bottom left corner of your instance of Visual Studio Code?
Right now? Yeah, mine says Python 3.8.1.
Oh, 3.8.1.
Yeah.
Oh, well, all right. Oh, for whatever reason, now it says, I know chat, you can't see this. Hold on, let me bring it up. So like right here, bottom left corner, right next to Cecil's camera, tell me select Python interpreter. I'm not going to select one. If you start typing and choose save. Nope, it doesn't matter. I guess that's not part of the problem. You see on my screen like what it's showing, right? Did you see that?
I can't read it, but I can see something pop up
Yeah.
behind
Fish
your
says,
head.
Clarky, do you have any format on save setting? I probably do. Format. On save. Let me uncheck that, I guess. Alright, try typing again.
Where did you have a separate linter? I don't know why you'd have a separate linter then.
Save it. Oh my god. Alright, let's look up quick fixes. Oh, go away! God. Quick fix Python? Quick open? What the heck is a quick fix? You know what I want to quick? You know what I want to be fixed quickly? These dang notifications. Stubox says, haha, call the team. If only I had that kind of influence. And even so, I wouldn't do that. That's kind of like, hey, look at me now. No, but like, all right.
Yeah, why don't I go ahead? Why don't I
Yeah.
close this and go back to doing it in VS Code on my machine? Since we did that last week and it wasn't we didn't have this issue.
Let's do that. Yeah, I don't know how to disable notifications, Tupac. What the heck? Oh, the session closed. Disable that. Settings. Well, let me turn all my stuff back on because that's gonna mess with me that I don't have. Yeah. What else did I change?
I'm just reconnecting. So I'm connecting to the environment on my machine.
Oh, it's like live share show verbose notifications. Controls with the show verbose, such as when a guest joins and leaves a session. No, that's not. Stubok, how do you disable notifications, man? Only Zenmon.
Start collaboration session.
I wish there was a way to just completely... Oh, autosave. Turn that back on after delay. That was the other thing to change. Alright, so I have all that set.
What in the world is happening? Can I not copy shit? Copy.
You know what? Let's take a quick... I gotta use the restroom anyway, and I'm kind of antsy. Let's take a quick... A short break, and then we'll come back to
We'll come back and mess with us. Alright, cool. Yeah. Let's do that. Good idea.
Sorry, folks. We'll be right back. I just gotta go tinkle. All right, chat. We're back. Mark, back from break. Started a new live share session. I joined it. Let's get.
Right, it says Brian Clark has joined the collaboration session. So this one says you're joined from a different account this time. I don't know if that was intentional or not.
Yeah,
I don't know if it matters, but it's just saying
I don't know if it
you
matters
use
either.
a different account this time.
Okay. Well, I'm in. So if you type something, save. Jesus Christos.
So no, this is saying on my side. So I need a formatter. I'm going to say yes. Okay, boom, it's going to install the formatter.
Saw
You
that all
probably
go
saw the
through.
same thing. Maybe, maybe not.
It's in the terminal here, yeah.
And then I'll just write some code here.
Still.
Hello. It's still messing up.
Yeah. So if I read this post.
This wasn't happening last week though, so this might be a new thing.
I don't know. Maybe it's something in Insiders. Controlling file access and availability, sharing a local server, sharing terminal, invitations and join access. Maybe it's file access and visibility. That's cool. I didn't know you can exclude and hide files or folders.
What is that window behind your head saying?
It says, this is the thing that just keeps popping up, man. It says,
what's the same one?
So the top one says running safe participant, and it looks like there's a progress bar that keeps going across. It says running safe participants for, and then in quotes, the file /main.py, and then saying quick fixes, right? And then below that, it says the host doesn't allow running this command. If needed, ask them to enable it. But I don't know what command that is that you need to enable. Like,
yeah. Do you think it's something that's specific to the Python extension, or is it, you think it's just like a VS Code thing?
I'm not sure, man. That's a good question. Like, how do you enable me to have more access or more rights? That might be just it. Like,
I don't know. I mean, they gave you access to the terminal. You have access to.
Who was that? .com. Thank you, man. Happy Twitch anniversary. Yeah, 2 years. Holy moly. And you got 12 months now. Holy cow. Thank you, .com. It's super nice of you. It's good to see you, bud. We're struggling right now, .com. Struggle is real today. Oh my gosh. It started off with some struggles. Then we had a little break from some struggles, and now we're back to struggling. I don't know, man. I don't know what to do. So now hold on, let's back up actually. So you're not in the browser anymore, right? On your end, you're in your installed instance of Visual Studio Code?
Yeah, I'm on my MacBook locally installed version of VS Code. Just connected to that environment remotely. That's it.
What the heck? I don't know, man. There's got to be, like, can you look through some of the settings on your end for live share to, like, give me more permissions, I guess?
I could.
Replacing Terra says, is it trying to save who the participants were /are that we're editing the file? That's a good question. And thank you for suggesting that, replacing Terra. So is it trying to save? Yeah, what is save participants? What does that mean? Let's try another. Let's go to Google for this instead of DuckDuckGo. All right. VS Live Share Save Participants. What does it all mean, Basil?
What if I change? So I have a section here that says feature set VS Live Share, and it's set to insiders on my side. What if I just set it to stable?
that maybe, I don't know. You are the hype boss, Robert.
All right. I'm going to. I'll put this to stable. I don't know if that'll change the existing connection, or maybe that'll change a future connection. Let's say.
I'm
Open
still
shared
connected.
servers. Show presence. Highlighted terminals. Yes. Show in status bar. Show the live share status in the status bar.
I feel like
Okay.
that's an issue here. Our files safe open. Vibrant. For guests using visual files not saved. Right, which we wouldn't want. I'm not trying to. This is. Dude, I'm super frustrated right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I would say go in and see if you could just set it to stable. Under live share, go to feature set and set it to stable. Because if it's an issue with insiders and stable clashing, then maybe that'll fix it. Because I remember it working fine last week.
Yeah.
Like you connected to me last week the same way, and we didn't have an issue. So if something changed between last week and this week, hopefully
set it to stable.
Okay. I don't know if this needs a reload or not, but
try saving
let's
again.
hope not.
Yeah, let's stop the session and restart it.
All right. Session details. Kill the session. I'm going to start a new session. Copy the link. Giving you the link. And you should have the link in the chat.
Getting it. Oops. Press the wrong button. All right, I'm joining. This is fun.
All right. This is definitely what we plan to do today. Debug Visual Studio live share.
This is what happens when you do it live. All right.
All right. So now it says you're connected.
Connected.
Yeah. See Brian Clark. You're in a thing.
Change some code. Save it. What happens?
So another random thing that I noticed. Every time you connect to my session, it moves my selected Python interpreter, like it clears it, and then I have to keep reselecting it.
Me too, yeah.
But it only does that like before I had one, and then you connected, and then now I don't have one.
Yeah. It just reset it on me now. Again. I'm gonna move this up so chat can see. Oh, not that. What the heck?
Like I keep selecting mine in that environment. Like dude, I just selected.
Why'd you select it? Look at this. Look, we're playing cat and mouse here. You select it, and then you see the yellow text down there. It says select Python interpreter. Okay, let me click on that.
But you shouldn't have to do that though.
And now did it reset yours?
Yeah.
I think we found a bug.
So I wonder if it's because of its rewrite that you can, like you're using yours. When you select it, it uses mine. Like I don't know if that's what's happening.
Yeah.
We should be using yours.
Change it on your end. I won't do anything. I'll just leave it as...
Change on my end.
Yeah, I'll leave it as like, unselected, I guess. All right, so now if you...
But you're still getting that other weird error, right? Like that thing is still happening.
Yeah, just popped up again.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Pretty totally honest with you.
I mean, I could just keep closing it out and let you keep working, I guess. It like happens like every 2 seconds, so. Replacing terrorists. I found something about this on Microsoft Docs, I think. Okay, cool. Drop the link. Replacing terror. What were you gonna say, Cecil?
I was gonna say, I wonder what happens if I make this a read-only session. So right now, this is a read-write session.
Yeah, try that. Worth a try.
I'm trying to see how you downgrade the session. Like, is that a thing?
Workbench, action file, save without formatting.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to.
Ended it.
Yeah. I have to create a read-only collaboration session. Okay. Copy that. We must have created like 10 sessions already for today. Must be like, what are these boys in Florida doing? All right. So I sent you the new one.
This is bumming me out. Very sorry, chat.
Yeah.
I wish this
Yeah,
was...
definitely not what we're planning to do today.
Joining. Placing Terror says, don't know if it will help, but it talks about it not triggering any safe participants. Okay. All right, thank you so much for placing Terror. I'll try it out. We'll see. Since he changed it to read only, and I join. Now if you type something and save.
Yep.
It shows you didn't save it yet. At least in my load.
It's saved on my side.
Okay, I'm not getting a notification. So I guess I just can't write any code. What else is new?
Yeah, it's saved on my side. I don't know why yours doesn't show save, but yeah, it's saved on my side.
Okay. All right. Proceed. Decorators and routing. Woo-hoo!
What were we talking about now? Python. That's what this is about. This is about Python.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Right. So we're talking about routing in Python. So as you look on Brian's screen, you'll see we just wrote this one route now at the bottom. So it should say app.route/Twitch. Right?
Yeah.
So instead of me going to like the default route, the default route is if I just typed in the address localhost 5000. Like this is what the default view or the default resource that it will return to me look like. It'll just say hello from VS Online, right? Which is the environment that we're connected to. Now, I added another route, right? And then, as you can imagine, we can add more and more and more routes, as makes sense, and as long as they're not the same path, right? But like we can add as many routes as we want. So I'm gonna go and run this. I don't know if this is going to work now because Brian's on read only. But maybe, and we'll see what happens, right? I'm going to do Python main.py, and maybe Brian will get it, maybe he won't. Who knows?
Like
Let's see what happens. You got it? Did you look at it? Great. Now, if you open it and you go to that page, you go to the default, it says hello from VS Code. If you go to /Twitch from that same
place, Twitch with love.
From Twitch with love. Great. So again, we can continue to add more and more of these types of routes and stuff like that using Flash, and that's super, super. Now, the next thing I want to show you that we can do with routes, right, is that we can actually add variables to the routes, right? So what's a route variable? And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So we can say something like routes. Hold on 1 second. Oh, I was just checking. Okay. I was making sure the IntelliSense was working. We can add route variables, which look something like this, right? Like I can say /Twitch, TWITCH, / right? And then now I could use like the greater than, less than, greater than sign. And I could do something like user or username or something like that, right? And so now that little segment of the path, right, that we added there, now that'll give us the ability to capture whatever that variable has to be, right? So I'll call this show Twitch user, right? And what I'll do is I'll match the username, or I'll match the parameter name to the name that's here inside of the route. So you notice this says username here, and it also says username within that less than, greater than sign, that little fragment that's there. But now that'll be a variable that we have inside of our thing.
Is this provided by Flask then?
Provided by what? I'm sorry?
Flask?
Yeah, this is all a part of Flask, yeah. So this is not, so don't look at this, this is not like formatted strings in Python or templated strings or anything like that. Like this is just like how Flask templates its route parameters. Now you can kind of look at it from that perspective.
Okay.
So again, I'm just going to write another function, and I'll return here return, and let's say, this, I'll use a formatted string. This is username apostrophe s. Oh, but I can't use an apostrophe, so what do I do? I have to escape it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
S is page, right? Or something like that, okay?
Sure.
Now I'm going to kill this Python process, and I'm going to run it again. I'm going to run that main py again. And now, whenever it pops up on your side, let me know if it's popping up or not.
It looks like it's still picking up that it's running. So now if I go
So run it.
and I go Cecil, it says this
Right,
is
that's
Cecil's
Cecil's page. Right, and then if you change it to Brian, right, it'll just say this is Brian's page, right?
Yep.
Okay. The important part is not necessarily the concept, but now we're just showing you how you could start to capture those route variables for different things, right? So now inside of here, inside of my method, I could say, maybe if username is equal to, I don't know, Cecil, do like a Cecil thing. If username is equal to Brian, do a Brian thing, right? Or whatever the case is. But now, like you're starting to be able to execute logic based on what the path is, right? Which it looks super simple because we're not doing anything really crazy with it right now.
Yeah.
But it becomes very powerful as you start to define what your path structures or your APIs look like.
Can you have multiple variables in the route?
Maybe you can. Let's try it. Right. So why don't I do this? I'll add another route that has more. Right. I'll call it, let's say, Twitch users with an S. Right. And then I'll add, let's just call this one user 1. And let's say user 2. And let's say user 3. Right.
Do they always have to be separated by slashes then?
I don't know. Maybe.
Okay. All right. We'll see.
That's a good question too. Do they always have to be separated by slashes? Because what it does by default is it delimits them by strings, right? And so if this is a string and we don't have like something to separate the string, how would you know where the string starts and ends?
Yeah.
From a URL perspective, like we know that the slashes in URLs, we know based on like how the web works, slashes in URLs separate segments of the path, right? So anything between a slash is a different segment. If we didn't have the slashes, then I don't know how we'd be able to let it know that this is not something that's separated. You know what I mean? Like I'm not sure how that would work. All right, so I got those in there, and now I'll just return user 1, user 2, and then I'll just pop in here user 3. So again, nothing too crazy. We're just gonna return all those names that we got. Okay.
Okay.
Kill it and run it again. I think there's like a hot reload thing for Flask. I got to figure out how that works, so I don't have to keep.
So we don't have to keep. Yeah. So if we say Cecil / Brian / John. There we go.
Cecil, Brian, John. Great.
Cool.
So you have many of them. You can have one of them. You can have 0 of them, right? But now you have the ability to start pulling like some of that data back from notebooks.
Sweet.
No.
Question in chat from Musical Bookworm says, are there any issues if a variable value contains apostrophes or other special characters? For instance, do we need to watch out for Bobby Tables types of issues like we would with SQL? I think it depends on Flask, right? Like how they interpret it.
Well, I think by default, your browser is going to format the URL. You know what I mean?
Ah, yes. So what's going to happen? I assume we should test this out. Actually, what I think is going to happen is it's going to, when the web request comes from the browser to the server, it's going to URL encode the characters in the URL, right?
Yeah.
So an apostrophe, let's say like John's, like if I do that. And then what's going to happen is Flask is going to see that and is going to reverse the URL encoding and
It's
get
good.
the actual
URL
character.
decoded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Robert Table says, "I promise I'll leave your tables alone." Wink. Yeah.
But that was a good question for sure. That was a good question.
Yeah.
Any other questions, real quick?
Ado Zima says, "Clark, just getting back from a meeting. Did you cover decorators?" Not yet. We're still talking about routing. We ran into an issue actually with the live share session, and we were kind of like trying to figure that out, and then we just kind of got around it for now. So, yeah, we'll get there. We should knock it out
Yeah, we are
soon.
going to talk about decorators, but yeah, we did have to deal with this situation for a little bit.
All right, so those are some cool routes that way.
All right. So what else do we want to talk about routes? So another thing that we could do with routes, right, is, so you notice how I'll do another one. Wait, that's a little bit different. So I'll say app routes, and I'll say slash. And let's say I want to get to. This is not the way that you do this, but again, I'm just showing you how to write these things from a URL perspective. Let's say I had a operation, right, and I wanted to get like the sum of these values.
Okay.
Again, not the way that you'd write it, but and I'd say first number slash and second number. Okay.
Okay.
Now what we do is we do something like def adding, right? Just because I didn't want to write sum, adding numbers, right? And then in adding numbers, we'll have first comma second, right? And then I will just return, I'm showing you this to just let you know you can do this. First plus second, right?
Okay.
And I can say,
so cool.
Yeah. The answer is the second, right? We can do something like that. Now I'm gonna reload this. Now, Brian, I want you to run this.
Okay.
And put in like a set of numbers in it, and let me know what happens. Right? So slash sum first second.
The answer is 1322342932.
I didn't see, what numbers did you put in? Is that a right answer? Did you put in like some super big numbers?
I put 132 and like 2,342,000, something like that. Yeah. So I just typed a bunch of numbers in the URL. It's super tiny though.
Okay, got it. Right. So I'm assuming that's right because I can't see Brad's numbers. But we saw that already. We're able to pluck these values out. No, Brian, what would happen?
Wait, that's not working actually. It's not working because I just did 1 and 1, and this is the answer is 11.
Right. Okay. So then there's a problem.
Yes.
Right. And the problem is this thing by default is assuming that those values are strings and not integers, right, or not numbers.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you can
hold on, it's because like on line 28 here, you're in the context of a string, so Python interprets that as like, oh, you mean to concatenate this first integer with the second integer, right, or number, right?
No, well, if you look at it, like, so remember, every time we use these templated strings, everything inside of the curly braces is valid Python, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I should be able to say, first plus second plus 1, right, or whatever, right? I should be able to do math in there, or call functions in there and do stuff within the context of those curly braces.
Yeah, but it's not doing that, right?
And it's not, right? So, and that happens because by default, Flask is going to assume that your URL parameters, your route parameters are strings.
I got you now.
So now we have to tell Python, well, these are not strings, these are something else, right? Like an integer or whatever the case is, right?
All right,
So
just to be a little bit more clear in my understanding and make sure other people are on the same page with me too, that might have been confused by this. The coming in from here, Flask is all of this is a string. Anything that comes in as these route parameters like this are strings.
yeah,
It's never converted into a Python type other than a string. So when you have it, so when Flask passes it into this route definition, which is adding numbers, the parameter first and second, the type of those is string. And so that's why this is okay. I was assuming, like, we make this assumption, right,
yeah,
as developers, that, oh well, I know that this is going to be an integer, but
yeah.
how does Flask know that that's an integer coming in over a string anyway? Because the whole thing is a URL, and a URL is a string. So
Right, the whole thing is a URL.
yeah,
So remember, we added these segments, right? Like those less than, greater than signs to let us know, well, these parts of the path are variables, right?
yeah,
Like these are separate sections that are here. So you have to tell Flask, right? You have to tell your web framework, well, like take these values, whatever these values are, and convert them, right? So you have to specify a converter. So let's see what a converter in this would look like. I'd have to do something like int colon, right? So I'm saying this one is an int, so interpret it that way. And second is also an int,
mm-hmm.
right? Now let's do this. Let's rerun this. Now try adding a smaller number, not a 300, so that we
I'll,
can verify the math.
I'll do 101. Okay, the answer is 2.
And the answer is 2 now, which makes sense, right? But it knows that because we now have changed it from saying this is a string, this line is a string, to saying, okay, well, I'm going to pull these variables out, but I'm going to treat them like they're integers. I'm going to treat them like they're numbers, right? And so, so that's one of the things that you could do, right? What actually happens by default, and you don't really have to do it. This is when we start to talk about like conventions and default behavior. By default, when you specify a variable, Flask does this, right? It assumes that it's a string, but because it's the default behavior, you don't really have to do it. It just does it for you.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right? So if we leave it out, that's the default behavior it's going to expect, right? So, we can say this is an integer, for instance, but we can even say like this is a float, right? So I can say, well, this is a whole number. I can say this is a thing number, a floating point number. And then I think it also supports UIDs. So UIDs being, like GUIDs and things of that nature. If you want to put a GUID inside of there, and you do that by saying UUID, right? So that's how you do it too, right? So like using the routes. So we saw how you can add the route. You saw how we can specify the different variables in the routes. And then now we're seeing how we can have different converters inside of it. The one thing I don't know about, I don't know if with Flask, if you could create custom converters. I know in .NET, I know in MVC specifically, that you can create custom converters. And you could say like, blah, 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 my custom thing, right? Yeah. And then you could add your own converter. I don't know if you could do that with Flask. I don't know if we have any Flask folks in the chat. If you know if we can do that or not, let us know. But I don't know if we can do that. You might have to like dig into the code yourself and figure that out.
Yeah.
So that's an option in there as well. All right.
Cool.
Now, what else can we do with some of these things? Now, the other thing that we can do, well, the last thing specifically about routing that I want to show you for today, because I do want to talk about decorators for like 10 seconds, because I think it's important. The last thing I want to show you about routes today that you could do is you can actually even specify the HTTP verb that you respond to. Right?
Okay.
So let's think about it.
Post.
So for folks that aren't familiar with how HTTP works in general, like an HTTP request is made out of a couple things. Right? I'm just gonna put this comment here, just so that you can see what it is. Right? Is that how you do it? Yeah. So an HTTP method, HTTP request has a couple of things, right? It has headers. Maybe I'll do it in small letters. It has headers, right? It has an HTTP method, right? And then it has a body, right? So the body would be like if you had a JSON payload or if you had an XML payload, or maybe you're sending a file like a binary image or something like that. Like that would be the body, right? When we talk about the methods, when we talk about there's gets, there's posts, there's deletes, there's patch, PATCH, there's options. There's a bunch of them. There's a whole bunch of different methods and stuff like that that you could do, right? And then we talk about headers. Headers are like the metadata, right, that are inside of your browser. And actually, a good way to show this, Brian, if you don't mind, could you open your browser and just open a web page, or even open that same web page that we had, that we just released just now? You know, right-click and go to the browser tools.
Okay, go to network.
Yeah, go to network, and then you could just show. I don't know if you could zoom in and show them like the different sections of like that request. Like just refresh it, and then just show them, you know, that single request that pops up.
Yeah, so we have well, what's going on here?
You see it?
Yeah, we have the request URL. So these are the headers, the general headers that come in: the request URL, the request method, the status code, the address that we went to, which is just localhost 5000. And there's a bunch of other headers that are available there, but like,
yeah. I mean, the actual headers are important,
ones.
but the headers are like key value pairs, right? There's just a way to send additional information back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
The request method is what type of action the browser is sending. I'm sending as in like, this is just a text, right? Like this is just a text field where the browser is saying, hey, I want to send a get action. I want to send a post action. I want to send a patch action. And so these different actions have different expectations with how the request looks like, right? So for instance, a get request has no body, right? So like this body, the contents of the body is either going to be empty, or your browser or whatever HTTP client tool you have is going to ignore it. It's going to assume that there's nothing in here for me to get, right? If you had a post, for instance, or a delete or something like that, then you can optionally have a body or not have a body, right? If you make a head request executes the request, but the only thing it returns is just the headers, right? And nothing else, right? So again, just thinking about like these different types of headers execute very differently, right? If you want to learn more about this, I'd tell you to, we'll send you some links and stuff like that for resources you could look at. But just, in terms of a super quick explanation of HTTP, like these are the various headers that you could execute, right? So with that in mind, with Flask, one of the things that you could do is specify which header do you want your request to respond to, right? So like by default right now, we're responding to like all of the headers. So any header that you pass over to this Flask, our Flask methods, it will just respond to it. But maybe you're building a RESTful API, or maybe you're building like a form or something like that, and you want certain actions, like certain methods, right, and certain routes to support certain types of HTTP headers, and others to not support other types of headers, right? So one of the ways that you could do that, I'll show you here in this Twitch example, is we could say methods, right? Methods, and then I could say that is equal to, and we'll give it like an array. And this would be an array of the different methods that it supports. So I could say, I want this to support get. Brian, you need to talk to your chairman.
Thank you for that, Valentin.
Right, so you can support these different types of headers here. So for instance, if I wanted Twitch to return that, I could do that. If I wanted to have one that supported multiple, right? Let's go down to, I'll just do it here. It doesn't matter. We can say methods here. And I could say, maybe I want this one to support both get and post at the same time, right? So there's get, And then remember, this is an array, so I can do comma, post, right? And so now, instead of our requests, like now it's going to be looking at these different things. So if I made a post request to /Twitch, right, you probably get like, I think it's a 4 or 5 or something like that. It'll say HTTP method not supported, right? Which means that when it hits this route, Flask should say, hey, we don't support that. And so I'm not going to execute this method, right? I'm not going to run this method for you because I don't support that header. You know what I mean? Just like if you came here and you try to execute a delete on username, right? I'm going to say, well, we don't support that header type, so I'm not going to do that. Okay. Now, what if for methods like this that support multiple types of headers, multiple types of HTTP verbs or HTTP methods, what if I wanted to conditionally do one thing or another based on it?
Well, I have a question for you about that, actually. Do you think that is a good practice to have multiple HTTP verbs supported on the same route? Robert Table says yes.
And no.
Morningbird
yes
says
or no.
yes. You say yes and no. Okay, let's hear more.
Yes and no. I mean, I think with anything, you got to be like intelligent, right? About how you're doing. If you're talking about an API, right? And I'll come back down here and I'll write some code that's not really Python.
And just to be clear, to get like I guess full context, the alternative is then you're going to create a separate route that might have the same for every HTTP verb that you have, right?
So. Yeah. So if I created like not a real API, right? And I had an API that looked like this. I had /API/ I don't know, questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now I might have different verbs on here, right? I might have, get that'll get me questions. Right? I might have, what happened?
It's being weird trying to follow your cursor for some reason. But keep going, you're fine.
Oh, okay. Then I might have something like post to the same endpoint that's here, right? That'll help me create questions, right? And then maybe I might have like a head request. A head request is kind of like just giving me metadata, like what does it support kind of thing, if you want to do that. Like supported, supported verbs, right? It'll return me something like that. And so that's one route, right? Another route might be question / question ID, right?
Yep.
And then I might want to do get because I want to get one question or that particular question. Maybe I want to do a delete because I want to remove that particular question. You know what I mean? So like there's different scenarios in which where you might want to do that.
Yeah.
I think this is very specific to APIs. For me, when it comes to web forms, right, and HTML and those types of things, I try not to have my posts and gets operations be the same.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to web forms, right? So web forms being there's HTML and there's a form tag and an input tag and there's a submit button. Yeah. You know what I mean? I usually try to have them go to different actions because now when I do that, at least in the frameworks that I've used, I have certain validators and things of that nature that I want to have run based on that content.
Right.
And so, I don't want my get endpoints being like spammed with stuff, so to speak. You know what I mean? So I usually keep them separate from that context. So that's why I'm saying yes or no, right? Like if I'm doing an API like this, like for sure, like I'll have a single route that will support multiple types of HTTP verbs. But again, generally when I'm doing HTML forms, like contact forms, submission forms, online registrations, those types of things, mm-hmm. I usually have them very separate because, again, I like to have my validation logic for the request separate for those.
Okay, fair enough. I'm intentionally playing dumb. Like I know I've built APIs before, but I think it's a good question to ask and have an answer to for people that might be new to building out APIs. And we had some responses in chat too. What was it? So Valentin says, well, I almost said fart. They said yes, because that was the previous message from them. Morningbird said yes. Robert Tables says yes. And then Robert Tables went on to say, REST is object-based. You should be able to do things to objects. The things are verbs, the objects are entities. Yeah, I agree with that. And speaking of which, RESTs, what does that stand for, Cecil? In case people that are hearing this term as we're speaking about it, like, what does it mean? What is it?
So REST is capital R, small e, S, T. It stands for representational state transfer.
Okay.
Representational states transfer.
Awesome.
So capital, R, E, right? And then the S is from here, and then the T is from here, right? So that's what it stands for. Representational state transfer. And this was like a thesis from a guy named Roy Fielding back in like 80 something or 90 something. I can't remember. He did it a long time ago.
Like 1980? 1990s?
1990, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was about using HTML to transfer the states of, or to drive the state of the UI. Essentially, is what it was. So instead of making a request and we're getting all the UI back, right? Like, just give me the parts of it that change. Like, what part of my state changed, and I'll update my UI, or my UI would be driven based on these stateful responses. And if you know HTML by itself is stateless, and this is a whole like debacle now, right? So HTML is somewhat stateless because with the absence of like cookies and local storage and other stuff, you know what I mean? When you send a request and comes back and you send another request, like those two requests have nothing in common.
Yeah.
Right. And so now you have to store the states, right? Like you have to store your data, right? Or your current, working environments, right? In something, right? And that's usually stored in cookies. If you're a .NET developer, we had a thing called view state, which everybody hated. Again, different folks you might have heard of sessions, and like everybody uses like a different thing, but at the end of the day, like, we're using cookies and JOT tokens and all these types of things to append to the protocol, and HTML and those types of things to carry state back and forth to help drive our UIs and our user experiences in general.
Excellent.
So this was just, this guy's a really well done thesis with a lot of ideas and stuff like that. I say this. I look at it as more like suggestions, because people become very.
Yes, this is kind of where I was going with the start of this question. Is like, there's people that become they're like purists when it comes to REST.
They're very purist with it. I like to be very more pragmatic with REST, because you can't always stick to the rules, or I can't even say the rules. You can't even stick to what somebody wrote in the book, right? You gotta apply it to your use case and your environment and your software you're trying to write, and do what makes sense for you.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's just my 2 cents on it.
So part of also why I got to this, and like I think there's, like you were saying, you can look at the writings about and the theory around REST, and if you want to try your best, follow it exactly to a T, but you're going to find in practice it's not necessarily the best. However, I think it's important to stick to the HTTP verbs as they were intended, because what I've seen, just to give you an example, this becomes a security problem where people will implement like a get endpoint, like, because they don't fully understand necessarily yet. They're just kind of like hacking things together, which is fine, right? They're learning still, but I want to help people that might be at that stage and think that this is going to be, and avoid basically this gotcha that happens. So what I've seen is people will implement an endpoint, right? They'll make it so that it accepts just GET requests, GET HTTP verbs. But what it's ending up doing actually in the implementation of the function that's supporting that route is they're actually doing more of a post. They're doing some type of state changing operation in a GET request. And that leads to opening up a security vulnerability in there, because GET requests are a little bit, well, I don't want. We could save it for another time, basically getting into the details of it. And honestly, it's been so long. I'm just remembering now, like that I've seen that. And it's been so long exactly what the vulnerability is and like how to exploit that behavior in an application. But basically a GET request is intended to be just something that's reading information. It's like read only. Think of it that way. If you get into a situation, I think it's from cross-site request forgery. That's why you leave yourself open to cross-site request forgery vulnerabilities. It's coming back to me. It's been a while.
It's coming.
It's coming. It's getting there. So, if you implement a GET endpoint that doesn't stay true to the principle of like following what a GET request should be, and you start getting into changing the state. What do I mean by changing the state? You're updating an entity, an object in your database or whatever it may be. You're creating new things in your database on that endpoint, even though it's a GET request. You're doing that type of stuff that belongs in a different HTTP verb, a different route maybe, or a different part of that function at least that's supporting that verb. That should be isolated separately, in my opinion, because you can run into this problem that I've seen come up quite a bit in my experience.
Sure.
So
definitely.
All right, excellent discussion. Thank you everybody who's been contributing to it. Valentine says still REST is not a spec, so it's very open to interpretation. Yeah, that's a good point too. Morningbird says it was meant to be documentation, less API. Yeah, and then they went on to say it's also easy to have an endpoint to exploit by tricking someone to execute GET requests with admin session in the browser. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if it starts doing more, there's a whole slew of things you can shoot yourself in the foot with by mishandling the implementations of your routes and what HTTP verbs you're supporting on those routes. So just that's kind of why I asked the question, because I feel like if we go back up to where you're supporting the multiple verbs here, like that get and post, like I'm assuming now that you're going to implement some logic in there that says, hey, if the verb is get, then we're going to do this. Maybe you call another function a child function through this, and then if the verb is post, then we go and do some other child function, right?
Yeah, right. So there's an option to do that here inside of Flask, and the way that works would be, so Flask has on every HTML thing, right? Has what are called request and response objects, right? So what's the thing that gives me information about the request that's actually coming into my code, right? Excuse me. Right. So how would we access the request? And we would do something like, I'll go back up to the top. I'm going up to the top because I like to put imports at the top, but you can actually put imports anywhere, which and on some languages you can. But I want to import the requests, right? So request. And well, what Flask does this really interesting thing where,
really quick,
like
sorry,
this,
because just thinking back of our past experience where there's a built-in request too, right, in Python? Or wait, were we always importing? Is this the same request that we've used in past streams from Flask, or is it from another library? Have we used it before?
Oh, we use a different library. We use requests with an S.
Okay. Okay.
Requests with an S is a different library.
Okay. All right. So
and that we use that. So this one is specific to Flask, and this one has to do with the context around that HTTP request.
Okay. Right? Cool. Proceed, please.
Now, what's interesting about this one is that even though we're importing it from the module, what Flask does, and I'm still learning about how it does it exactly, is that it'll scope it per execution of the method.
Okay.
Right. So what does that mean? So we have this variable, right? This essentially is a variable or a class or some object, right? But if hello runs, or if show switch runs, or if show Twitch user runs, the request will have the right information from that specific request, right? And we don't have to set it. Flask will set it for us, right? I think it's called like context local or global context local. I don't really know how it works. We'll figure it out as we go on. But essentially,
nice that it does it for you.
Yeah, it does it for you by default, right? But it's just that we have to import it into this module. So if I come down here, right, now that we've imported requests, I can say something like hit enter. request.method, right? Or I could say request dot. And we can see all these different things.
We don't
that are
see your
inside of
IntelliSense
requests.
on our end, by the way.
Oh, you don't? Oh,
Yeah.
that sucks. All right.
But
okay.
we're
All right,
picturing
fair
in our
enough.
minds that there's this little tooltip that pops up and it says, "Hey, here's your options on this request object."
Okay, well, there's a thing called request, right? And I could say something like method,
Okay.
right? So I could say if, right, request.method is equal to get, like do a get thing, right? Whatever that is. Let's say, I'll print the username out, right? Else, stop being silly back then. Else, right? If it's not, then I can return some alternative string, which could be like, I don't know, stop trying to post stuff here. Wrong address, right? Whatever, right? You could do stuff here. You can do like some alternative thing, right? And again, we covered conditional logic and ifs and elses and stuff like that before. If anybody needs to go over that, we can like super quickly, and we could also point you to the stream that we covered that in, right? So now, if I were supposed to run this, right, and then Brian, you could try it on your side. Oh, I have a problem. Oh, I got to take this stuff out. I can't leave this in here.
Oh yeah.
That's not valid. Okay. I have another problem. Number does not exist. I wrote number somewhere. Oh, sorry. Okay. Well, all right. This is working now. It should be running. So, I don't know if you can run post requests in a browser by yourself. I don't think so.
Have a Rust client.
But if you have Postman or anything like that on your machine,
let me see for a moment here.
You could see the differences with that. What are you using? Are you using Chrome?
Yeah, I do have Postman. I'm just opening it up separately to see what might be here. I haven't used it in a while, so the Chrome app is deprecated. Okay. Last time I used this was back in June, apparently.
You can use curl too, I guess, if you have curl on your machine.
I should be good. I think I got this here. So we're gonna say local hosts 5000 / Twitch / Cecil. I'll do that. Yep, that worked. Okay, let me bring up my screen so people can see. I think that's as big as I can make it. All right, so I'm using, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not familiar with this, there's a ton of tools that can do this kind of stuff. One of them is called Insomnia. Another one, two big named ones at least, right? And then the other one is Postman, which is what I'm using here. Apparently an old version of it that I need to update, but I haven't been using it that often lately. In any case, what it allows you to do is set up the URL that you want to make a request to, and then you could change the HTTP verbs that you're using there. So if I do a get against localhost 5000 / Twitch / Cecil, which is the one that Cecil implemented here, right? And this is the one that supports get and post verbs. So if we do a get request, it should return back saying this is Cecil, well, depending on the name that we pass in as the parameter here, Cecil's page. So if we do that and I send, we do see the response here. I know it's probably super tiny for some people, but it says this is Cecil's page. And I can't zoom in any further, it seems like, on here. And then if I change
Control
this,
plus, does that not work?
I was trying.
No.
Like I can go smaller now, but like there's like a max.
Oh, there's a maximum. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
So if I change the verb now from get to post, and you can see there's a lot of HTTP verbs, but the main ones are get, post, put, patch, delete, and options. Anyway, so we change it to post. We click send. We'll see stop trying to post stuff here, wrong address, which is the message that Cecil implemented here. Now let's see if I try one that's not supported, like let's do put and do a send. 405 method not allowed. So that's built into Flask, right? That's not anything in your code that did that. That's Flask replying back saying, "Hey, you done messed up." That's not.
Yeah, that's totally built into Flask. So that's not something I had to do. Why don't you try doing that on the roots? So the roots routes, the default route slash should just return hello from VS Online. And I didn't specify which ones it supported or not.
So
why don't you try and do a couple of requests on that?
If I do get, it says hello from VS Online. If I do post, it says nah, 405,
Right.
method not allowed.
So this is where we start talking about conventions and stuff like that. Now, based on that behavior, we can assume that if you don't specify a supported method, that instead of accepting all of them, I'm assuming, because I haven't read this anywhere, but I'm assuming that Flask by default is just going to support get by default. Unless you said I support more stuff, which is good, right? Because you don't want to say, hey, well, I support everything by default, right? And then you start getting hammered with all kinds of malicious requests for different things and whatnot. So I think that makes sense. Okay, so we saw routing. We saw how we could use requests, the request method or the request object to get things. We saw we could pull out these variables out of things. We saw we can put in methods and specify the different HTTP methods that we get back. And that's essentially a lot of what's involved inside of routing with Flask, to be honest with you. Like, we're just going to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. One of the things that I think could be really interesting, and we'll probably see it as we continue to go on, is like, what's the best way to organize like a larger Flask application?
Yeah, I'm curious,
You know what I mean?
right? Because you don't want to put all your routes into just one file like this necessarily, right? You might want to separate them based on concerns. So maybe you have like a route that deals with all the user profile stuff and like setting up that kind of thing. Maybe you have another route that's like doing more. I don't know. You think about like an e-commerce site. It's this is everything that handles all the cart methodology or methods and functionality.
Yeah,
I was combining methods and functionality.
That's
Methodology.
methodology.
Yeah, so like things like that, you'd want to abstract those into their own areas and not have all of that in one file, right? Because then that file becomes really large and unwieldy.
Yeah, totally. So, definitely, I think those will be some of the things that we look to kind of build out a little bit more. I think the goal is we're gonna, clean this code up a little bit and like turn this into like an API of some sort, and start working with, creating a bot or something like that out of it, like having it be something real world that you might want to use. But at least for today and probably like the next 2 or 3 streams, we just want folks to understand like this foundational aspect of Flask and how we can return stuff from it. One of the things that's really interesting too, if you notice, we've only just been returning strings so far.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so I've just returned a plain Python string, and like it knows how to figure its way around turning that into an HTTP response.
Yeah, it's
right?
really interesting. Like, what if I wanted JSON data to come back?
JSON, you say? Well, I think I might know how to do that.
No.
And I think I might know how to do that. And so if you wanted to use JSON per se, one of the things that you could do is you can actually import JSON into your Flask application. Right?
Okay.
And so how would you do that? Like, how would you import like JSON and things like that? Now, Flask has this thing called JSONify. Right? So, and it's just another, thing that's in the module. So if I type JSON, if I, right?
Mm-hmm.
Boom. So if I want to return JSON from a URL, I'll create another route here. I'll call this routes / I'll call this fake JSON, right? Because we're going to return some fake data. I'm going to create a method. I'm going to call this, give me JSON, right? And then now what we could do is we could return like an object or like a thing, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like a dictionary or something of that sort, like a key value pair maybe, that we could send JSON to, right? So I could do something like, I could do something like, let's say, data, right, equal to, and I'll create a Python dictionary. And let's say I'll say something like name, Brian, right, job, and he's a Twitcher. No relation to The Witcher. And and let's say like location, and let's say Florida, right, or something like that. Okay? So that's our data. Okay. Now, if you wanted to return it as JSON, we could just say return JSONify, right? And then I could just pass in. He knows it gives us some interesting data here and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, all you really need to do is just return it. Right. So we have these key value pairs. I'm going to return data. Okay. Save that, and I'm going to reload that thing. Now I just have it set to return to accept GET requests. So Brian, if you run this,
before I do,
I
have a question for you from Morningbird.
Sure. Yes.
JSON or XML? You have to use one for the rest of your life. Pick one.
JSON's smaller. XML is heavier. I save more bytes with JSON.
I picked JSON. Well, what about you, Morningbird? You asked the question, but we're putting it right back to you. All right, so you want me to make a request to that route?
/fake JSON.
Fake.
So you root URL and then just /fake JSON.
I did that, and look at that. It came back as JSON.
And right, so there you go. That's it comes back to JSON. Right, and so that makes it much easier for you to, do those types of things. And fast.
Question in chat from Aerodynamics says, is there any validation library for input in Flask?
Not out of the box. I think we might have to download one, as in like pip install one. But from my knowledge, there isn't any validation built into Flask itself.
Yeah.
So last week, we did speak a little bit about the differences between micro frameworks and full-blown frameworks. So Flask is a micro framework, and it lets you do like the bare minimum. Well, a little bit more than the bare minimum, but it lets you do some very fundamental things. But when it comes to validation and authentication and like all this extra stuff, like those are additional pieces that we're gonna have to like bring together, kind of plug them in with each other and make them work. But to my knowledge, out of the box, Flask doesn't have a thing to help you support JSON.
So quick time check. We're about 4 minutes to 3 hours streaming, by the way. We didn't touch upon Decorators. Is that something you still want to talk about briefly, or
no? Because that's gonna be a long conversation. So let's table Decorators for next week.
Okay.
But I think we did have like that period of time where we're trying to figure some stuff out. But outside of that, let's talk really quickly about everything we covered today. So we did see.
I have one comment at least about, or like kind of question to you. Like all this time, like in case people did come for the decorator part of it, right? If they're like, I don't know what I've heard that word, I don't know what that means in Python. Like in essence, we've been kind of using decorators in here for these routes, right? That @app.route part is considered a decorator, correct? If I'm right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's basically these little attributes that you put at the top of a function that kind of gets run or implemented behind the scenes by Python and the various libraries it's creating and supporting it. Those things will handle doing that stuff for you, and then your code gets executed for that function after that, right? Just really quick to kind of just touch upon that, right?
Yeah. For the most part, that's essentially what it is. It's decorators or attributes in any language. Like JavaScript has decorators as well. C# calls them attributes. Essentially, they're annotations, right? Like the general word for them is they're annotations. They're metadata that you associate with your application. Maybe metadata is not a good word, but they're declarations that you specify next to a method or class, or sometimes a variable, depending on your language, to give them additional functionality or additional meaning. So here, Flask is, one of the reasons people love Flask is because I can just write a regular Python method. Like if you look at this, like this is just the hello method, right?
Yeah.
Like we wrote this method on day one, like months ago, right? But you're telling me just by adding like this decorator at the top, I've now just created a web application.
Yeah.
Super simple, right? It's one of the things that people love about Flask and about Python in general, is that you could do these really powerful things in such a simple, expressive way. But your code doesn't have a lot of framework, like cruft in it. You know what I mean? Like this is just a plain Python function. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's essentially is what it is. I'm just returning. I have a whole bunch of functions, and they're all returning strings. Obviously, you won't write a real application like this, but in terms of getting started, this is really all you have to do.
Oh, Electric Havoc with the 10 months. Thank you so much. It's starting to look like Damien. Now you need an Aussie accent. Oh yeah. Well, thanks, man. Appreciate the 10 months of support. Good to have you on the team still. All right. Well, so yeah, next week maybe we'll get into like learning more. Like I guess you can create your own decorators too, right? So maybe we can dive into that on the next stream.
Sure.
And learn more about the decorators and specifics about it. So that's cool. All right. You wanted to do a quick recap of what we learned today. We learned that live share is not on our side today.
Yeah.
With this for some reason.
Yeah, for some reason, and I don't know if it had to do with the insider versions that we're using or something like that. But last week it worked fine. This week just wasn't our week to mess around with live share.
Yeah.
So we did spend a lot of time. Apologize for folks because we spent a lot of time that we could have been covering decorators. But we'll promise next week or the next stream that we'll do that. But I think we did have a lot of success with the script that we wrote today, and showed how everyone can go and like create your own environments. And what I'll do by at the end of the stream, I'm just going to go ahead and push this to GitHub, and you all have the link to the repo, so you should be able to just download it. And if you're using VS Online, once you point to the repo or your fork of the repo or my repo, you should just have all these things available and ready and running for you. So that should be great. So that'll be the code, that'll be all the dependencies installed, and I'm adding a piece to create the virtual environment. So really, all you should have to do is just pull it down, and you should just have an environment that's just ready to go, right? In like 5 minutes or less. So I think that was a good thing that we did today. We did learn a little bit about routing with Flask, which I think was cool. We saw how to create basic routes. We saw how to create what I call route parameters or route variables, right? And how we could pull data out of those routes. We saw how to specify the types of those parameters. Mm-hmm. So they could be ints, strings. They're strings by default, but they could be integers. They could be floating point numbers. They could be GUIDs, UUIDs, uniquely identifiable IDs. Mm-hmm. And then we also saw how we could specify the methods that we support, right? So, HTTP methods being, put, post, deletes, options head, and what those do and the roles they kind of play inside of here. Probably next week what we'll do, kind of like what Brian is saying, we'll probably talk a little bit more about decorators, because again, all these things in Python, all these things in Flask are Python decorators, and I think it's just good to understand how they work. So we'll talk a little bit more about decorators just as a foundational piece, and then we'll probably dive a little bit into responses, because we really haven't spoken about responses. Right, HTTP responses are important. We saw how to return JSON today, which is pretty simple.
Yeah.
But there's other things that you might want to do with the HTTP response. You might want to set a cookie, or you might want to set the HTTP headers, right? Again, particularly if you're doing RESTful APIs, like being able to set headers and status codes and things of that nature might be really important for your workflow. So next week we'll see how we could do those types of things, and then we'll talk about decorators as well. I think decorators is going to take not a lot of time, because there's a lot to write, but just because there's a lot to understand before we get to just writing an @ sign, blah kind of situation. But cool. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you all for staying with us so far. I hope you found this useful. Again, we're always looking for comments and feedback and suggestions and ideas and all that good stuff. So, let us know what you're thinking, and we appreciate you catching up with us today.
Yep. Excellent. All right, I'm going to switch to here. Let's get a quick thumbnail for the video.
It'll be cold.
All right, good. That should be good enough. And then we're going to go raid. So thanks again, everybody. As Cecil was saying, we appreciate it. We're going to go raid InstaFluff today. InstaFluff, what are they doing?
I feel like I've heard about this person before. What is InstaFluff do?
InstaFluff does mostly JavaScript related projects. Lots of fun little interactive games that you can do from chat as a viewer. Very wholesome individual. I like him a lot. So those of you that are here, Sakalo and Kotoli, good to see you. Although we're wrapping up here, sorry Kotoli, this is the end of the stream. We are blasting out of here. We went really long today, 3 hours, because we had some struggles, but we kind of got around them. So in any case, thank you all so much for joining us for another episode here. It's not long. Oh, what do we want to call this now? We're no longer learning Python from scratch. We've already learned Python from scratch. Now we're like getting into more advanced topics, right? So I don't know. We got to come up with a
we'll
name.
figure it out, man. I'm not sure. Learning Flask or something.
Yes. So anyway, thank you all for joining us. We hope to see you next week. Same place, same time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, right here on the Clarkio channel. We'll be doing more and continuing more with this building an API in Python. Oh my gosh, words. So thanks from me and Cecil to everybody. We're going to go raid. So stick around for the raid, please, because you get extra channel points for doing that for one. Channel points.
Oh, you do?
You redeem things for doing channel points now. Like you can redeem chair and that kind of thing. In any case, I'm going to roll the end credits to give a little extra special thank you to those of you that supported the stream in a unique way. And then the raid will commence. So have fun in InstaFluff stream. Have a good rest of your Wednesday, and we'll see you next week or maybe tomorrow for tomorrow's stream.
Nice.
Adios. Have a good one.
That's hilarious.
Heck.